straight away then?
No, not really. I think we're just going to say, hey, everybody, we have a guest, and we'll be right back.
This is 2OF Entertainment.
Welcome to the Lost Dollar Business Club, where we talk about business, and not just business. We talk about what makes businesses go up and what makes businesses go down. If you're interested in businesses, this is where it is. We talk about the global economy. We talk about global politics. We talk about everything and anything business related that affects your life on a global scale as well as a local scale. And don't miss after the show, Lost and Found.
All right. We're back.
We are back. Yeah. Who knew?
David, all dapper David. Looking good.
No. It's I'm wearing dead man's clothes again. So I'm told it's another journey to the thrift store. You know me.
Okay. All right. That works.
You know, Stephen leads and I follow.
We own the thrift stores. It's a little different. Anyway, it's how we make money. We have an exciting guest today.
We do.
Let me just see this. John can't join us today. John is in Argentina hunting Nazi gold like usual. So he'll be back next week or the week after. So John, our best to him. But we have an exciting guest. I'm going to let Michael tell you who he is. And we're going to bring him in because all I'm going to say is this gentleman's views are 180% different in Guy Standing's views. So I'm very excited to hear this.
Yes, the viewers of our show know that Guy Standing has been also on the European continent and also has completely different views about UBI and digital currency. And Anthony Aspbury here runs the Whole Man Academy, a movement helping successful but unfulfilled men build strength, success, direction, and connection in a world that's becoming increasingly disconnected. So he's talking about the systems that are shaping our lives. I saw his post on LinkedIn about universal basic income and the potential shackles of UBI, as well as digital currency and media control. And he's challenging men to wake up, wise up, and take back control. So I'm very interested to see what Anthony has to say about all these new digital systems that are coming out.
Cool. So should we bring him in, or just want to keep talking about him? Okay. Anthony, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Welcome, Jack. Good to be on. And it's funny because I see your intro there and I realize there's so many ways the podcast could go, not just with me, but anything to do with business, with digital these days.
Right.
What the last 4 or 5 years have chucked at us in the US, in the UK, or in the Five Eye countries, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. So I'm excited to be on and see where this goes.
Yeah. You're not the only one. Us too. So.
My first question, Anthony, is what about the women? Because that's not in any of your descriptions of what you do.
Yeah, well, firstly, I worked. I don't need to give you like my potted history because it will kind of bore people. But in short, I worked in the city in London in the financial sector for I round it up to 2 decades, but probably a little bit less than that. And when I left, it's because I'd realized I was unfulfilled. I was earning good money and, was in a nice office and had good working conditions. But ultimately, you look around as a man in your 40s and whatever, think like, is this it? Which I think has caused an awakening across the world in people that maybe the lockdowns and COVID, whatever you thought of that stuff, it did make people maybe reassess what was important to them. But at that time when I left the city, for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to leave. What do I want to do? I understood for me what it was like. There was nowhere around for a man to go that felt disjointed or disconnected with where he was going in life, which is why I actually flew to the US to go to Tony Robbins events. There was nothing in the UK at all. Right. And if there was, I couldn't find it, which meant it couldn't have been that good. And all this links to, I work specifically with men because I think I understand men. I worked with hundreds of them. I've coached hundreds of them. I have no idea how women work. Right. Trying to understand how women work is like trying to nail jelly to the wall. And even yesterday, I had a contact with a woman who, a lot of women, interestingly, read my posts, not just about UBI and stuff, but because and I love it, they're trying to understand what's going on in our heads, which is funny because we probably don't fully know what's going on in our heads anyway. And I realized that, in business, you understand niching can be very important. And if I was doing personal development for men and women, my messaging, my imagery, my content would be totally different to when it's just men, because we understand men generally, what we like, what we don't like. And, things that we're going to, like dog whistle images that are going to help a man understand that I know what's going on with him are going to be totally different to a woman. So that's where working with men, I just find it works well for me. And there's a lot of connections with sport and men wanting to go to the gym and sit around a fire and get out in nature and all that stuff. So many's my thing, but I do have plenty of women in my life to keep me on track.
There you go. I like that he says men sit around fire. No, men, we don't sit around fires. We smoke cigars.
It's the same thing, Stephen.
That's about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
Here's the funny thing. When I was a kid, you would join the Boy Scouts, you'd go camping because that was going to make you a man. Now, if you talk to men of a certain age, like let's say 40 and under, if they look at you, say camping, they can't spell it. And number two, they have no idea what camping is. So I appreciate that you have the Whole Man Academy, and I appreciate there's a place for men to go. Because Tony Robbins is interesting. I don't think I'd go to Tony Robbins though. It's just too much hype for me. I want someone that's more focused. Because his message is kind of like everyone can do this. No, not really. You have to have a mindset to do.
I think you're spot on because it's also when I say cultural thing, a country thing. If you go to the US, men are much more aligned and used to going to personal development. In the UK, men are, and maybe Dutch men, French men, what have you, maybe Europe, they're a little bit more guarded. And I know when I went to the first Tony Robbins event in London, we were there at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and there were people like high-fiving each other. And I was like, for fuck's sake, if people are really doing this, I'm done. But I realized I had to put away some of my own things about that, and I got into it. I mean, I went to that, then I went to the event in Tenerife and stayed at the Ritz in Tenerife, which is lovely and really immersive. And then I flew to Miami and went to Date with Destiny. And all of that helped me on my path. And like you say, there's no way with someone you're going to agree with everything they do or say or their actions. But I think you can take the best out of what it applies to you and apply it in your life. But yeah, it's an interesting rabbit hole to go with personal development, because I also think that if the system is controlled, let's say, then certain people that you think are high profile will get there because they've been pushed more than others. So we could link back. Are you now
high-fiving everybody yourself, Anthony? Is that what you're telling us?
It's just a good question. It's just like when I do the men's events in the UK, it's pretty relaxed. The last event I had around here, I mean, I live in the Cotswolds, so I'm about 90 miles north of London in the countryside. And what you see there is, we mentioned men and fires, but a lot of men are in the rat race and on the hamster wheel and busy with looking at phones and scrolling and emails and everything else. And they rarely get a time to totally disconnect from the matrix. And you see a lot of those guys, they want to work on themselves, but also they want to have these honest conversations. And if you work for big companies and you disagree with what's going on in the world at the moment, you can't say anything, because if you do, you're out. Look at LinkedIn. I spoke yesterday to someone who said, I can't like certain posts on LinkedIn because obviously it shows up in your feed that David, Steve and Michael have liked this post. And if that post is something that they deem as offensive or controversial, you're going to get a knock on your door. So it's an interesting time to be a man.
That's what Trump is going to do anyway, isn't it? For all his students and everything, everybody wants to go into the US. It's already started by stealth. They're going to look at your social media feeds. A lot of recruiters do it as well. Look at the social media feed before think, what sort of person is this?
In the UK, I believe that the government will always dress up anything they want to do to enforce control. They'll always dress it up for your good, which is a sensible way. Get people to think they want something, get them to beg for it, and we'll give it to them. And then later down the line, hence why UBI. But, in the UK, there's several bills going through at the moment, whether they'll be successful, but you can see how it starts. And the one is it's basically the online safety bill, which is, and I get it, it's dressed up as some kids have been bullied online and maybe have taken their own life, which obviously is terrible. Therefore, the best way to do it is to make sure everybody has, a biosecurity digital way to have social media. But then, of course, if you're a naughty boy linked to UBI, then if you say that you disagree with whatever, then you have no anonymity and you can't have free speech.
Right. But here's the interesting thing. It's in the last 20 years, I've noticed this. And just, you don't know this because I'm a charming person. So I tell people, I'm from New York City, born and raised, right? So our way of looking at things and our vernacular, except when I have to be in the public and do like work is much different in private. Like, we use the F word and the C word like a comma, and we're okay with it. And in Australia, when I lived there, they use the C word like you say water. And I find that it became the pussification of the globe right around somewhere in the mid to late 90s. We just all of a sudden, everyone got offended about everything. And I'm like, but there was a time when we weren't offended, to your point of I like something on LinkedIn, or if I like this or I like that. So that becomes an issue because you can't really ever be yourself. You're always guarded. And I told the story. I remember in New York when I started on Wall Street, you would scream and holler at each other and call each other everything in the book. But there was no stress because you got it out. And then when you were done, it'd be like, Anthony, we're still going to lunch. Of course we are.
Let's go for a pint.
Yeah. It's like, we already yelled. We're good. Now we go to, but then you don't do that anymore. So then people build it up to the point where they want to kill each other. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. Now, what we spoke about before go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, it's a really important point, because then the question is not so much what is happening, but why is it happening? And one of the reasons for that, and I would wager you'll probably agree, is like the media stoking division and doing that means that it winds people up online. Obviously, the algorithms will show you more of what you're technically interested in. And what always makes me laugh or makes me sad, whichever way you look at it, is LinkedIn, for example. I love LinkedIn because it's great for my business. I can connect with lots and lots, millions of men if I want to, and spread my message and kind of help them. But a great example, I think it was last year, there was one that went viral, which is a guy, and it was dubbed the crying CEO. And he was a chap, I think in the UK, it doesn't really matter. And he'd run a small business and let some people go, made them redundant. Okay. And what he'd done is he'd written a long post about it, which fine, it's hard to do that, but he'd also taken a photo of himself crying into camera. Now, I'm going to wager that none of you would do that. And what happened on social media was the divide. You had the people that said, what the fuck is this guy doing? That's embarrassing. Like, fine, if you're upset, but why, if you got to get a camera out and be like, hold on, let's take a photo of me, why would you upload that on? And then you had the people that said, what about his mental health? You're being nasty. And then they started arguing in the comments, and it literally takes on a life of its own. And I can't even remember now, but had, 1 million comments or something ridiculous. And you saw the breakout fighting in there. And what I see is people were saying stuff they'd never say to your face. But when you're online, it's easy to tap and say things, and I'm going to block you and this and that. And you're like, social media is a great tool. Also, it doesn't help, but media's the same, because I spoke to someone the other day who deals with very high profile people and said, it is so hard because the media, I get it, they're there to show you the biggest, scariest thing they can and keep your attention. And they always lead with dread. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And
ends in a nice story. Do you remember like drop the dead donkey and all that stuff? That's how it all. It's always something really scary at the beginning, and then right at the end, there's a fluffy duck that comes on the news, and everything's tickety boo, and it's always as if it's predictable.
I feel the more I'd be embarrassed to work for a big media company, and I know people that have worked for the BBC and work for different places, and generally they're good people, but you've got to look at who's pulling the strings of how it's being pushed and created. But I just find it frustrating because people watch it all the time and they just get indoctrinated by it. And when you layer in the psychology that these organizations have, especially the government, and they have their own unit, which looks at disinformation and does that stuff, it's like a psychological operation to affect people's minds. And it works. I know people that, sadly, I'm like, these people are never going to wake up. They will believe anything they see in the newspaper, and any opinion that they've got. Have you why do you think UBI is bad or anything else, they'll just repeat what they've read in the paper. And you're like, but have you looked into it have you read any other books that oppose that or anything at all? And it's like, why would I do that? I know my opinion that I got from someone else. And I don't know if you guys find that in the States as well.
We don't have opinions here. People watch Fox News, so they know everything, which is wonderful. And then they listen to the Orange Man, which is also interesting. And we have a show called Vaguely True or Vaguely News. And the guy is like the #1 radio host in South Africa. So he did his show yesterday, and we talked about Trump and the South African president and everything that they said in the White House and how much of that was just BS, just so everybody can get a soundbite. So unfortunately, we talked about this before the show, the attention span of the average person now is like of a gnat. So like these guys know I love to read books. I constantly read books and everything. So I like that. Most people don't read anything. They don't even read a newspaper. They read TikTok or they read Instagram or Facebook, and they're done in 30 seconds. And it's sort of like, but how do you derive an opinion from something that you know nothing? I don't care what it is. And we're going to talk about UBI and digital currencies and whatever. Yeah. But the thing when you talk about bullying, and I remember this like 15 years ago when people were like, oh, my so-and-so killed themselves because they got bullied on Facebook. Thinking to myself, let me see if I have this straight. When I was a kid, when you got bullied, you know, you met in the schoolyard and you went fisticuffs, right? That's how you got bullied, or you pushed around. Now kids are getting bullied online. I'm like, really? Oh, there's an off switch. I don't know if you know this. I mean, I know you're not smart enough, but there's this thing called an off switch. You don't have to be on Facebook. You don't need. So I don't know why the government needs to have bullying laws. This has always fascinated me. Why can't, I know this is going to be controversial. Why don't parents actually parent and teach their kids? And that's where I think, and I said the mid 90s and whatever, I think like the generation that brought me up and my generation, because, you know, I'm 17 billion years old. We were the last, for lack of a better term, real men, real kids, like we were the last of that generation. And then all of a sudden the babysitters became, as you put it, an iPad, and parents aren't parents, and they became be your child's friend. My parents weren't my friend. If I talked up, I got slapped. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you want something to cry about? Boom. Okay, now I'm going to cry. You know, it's like different thing. So today it's sort of like, oh, Johnny, what's wrong? I don't care what's wrong, Johnny. Go clean your room. You know, they don't do that. And I think that has a lot to do with the problems we have as a society globally, where there's no respect, there's no this and there's no that. Now, granted, you go to Thailand, China, and Japan still, because they still value the old ways. But now everybody's like, oh, no, you have to be more. No, you don't need to be more modern. We need to be, you still have values. And I think those are gone too because of the internet, social media, and attention spans, because nobody listens, you know.
And the social media side, which, you know, it affects nearly everybody. I'm not saying everybody's on social media, but, you know, when you realize that how many hundreds of millions of people are, and they all have their own relationship with social media. And I always say social media is a tool. You can use it or it can use you. You know, we need water, but if you have too much water, you'll die. And if you don't have enough water, you'll die. So in between, you've got to find the middle ground. And I hear adults talking about, oh, I hate social media. And I say, if you don't like social media, it's because you haven't learned how to use it yet. You haven't learned how to switch it off or distance yourself from unfollowing them. If people are pissing off, just unfollow them. But it's hard because if parents can't do it, there's no way the kids are going to be able to. And we have, for context, we have 3 boys who are 7, 5, and 2. So, you know, they haven't grown up with this, but we believe the importance of nature, but also they're going to have to learn AI stuff. You know, the world they're going into in the workforce in 10, 15 years time, not saying they have to go and get a job, but, you know, what they're being taught now, we home educate our kids, but what they're being taught now in school as a 10-year-old going to be relevant when they're 20 years old, because how is the world going to change? Which I guess leads on to UBI, because will there be jobs at that point?
Well, I go with no.
There's
going to be no jobs. So,
right. Well, let's dive into it, because this came about because your post on UBI and as a warning, because there's a lot of people who are so afraid of the shifting economy that they're pointing at UBI. And we've had guests on the show talk about universal basic income, or even just some sort of universal income. You know, Elon Musk has said, let it be a universal high income. So now there's lots of people talking about it. But you write a cautionary tale about it. So why don't you tell us what your thinking is around it?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I would say it's like anything. Most people have an opinion on it, but they don't really know much about it, if that makes sense. And I could link that to vaccines. I could link that to politics. They'll only kind of know what they want to know, and they won't have looked at both sides of it. And that's why when I've spoken to people about UBI, I'm not saying it's a bad idea in principle, because why wouldn't you think it? Wouldn't that be nice to give people, especially poorer people who are struggling, why wouldn't you want to allow them to have more money so they can have more freedom, less stress, etc., etc.? I would say the sad thing to start with, firstly, when you talk about it, is some people say UBI, that's like a conspiracy theory. And I've said before, you're like, okay, well, it's already been trialed in various countries, and it doesn't take you long. Yeah, to look at it's not like you go, I can't find it online. You can just look up, and they did it in Wales, over in this country. They've done it in Canada. And when you then see on LinkedIn, I mean, that one I think had 60,000 impressions, 500 likes, 500 comments roughly. And I would say 80 to 85% of people said, I totally agree, I'm quite concerned about it. Then you had some, and I'm happy to listen to others' opinions, but said, no, you're totally wrong. You've got it all wrong. It would be an unconditional. And I'm like, I don't think the government give anything away unconditionally. That doesn't. Look at the last few years. If you still think that, in a way, I'm not sure if you can help these people. They can't see that you don't get anything for free. So yes, they have trialed it. And I wrote down to make sure I had, it was Finland in 2017-18, Canada 2017-19, I think California, just small kind of pilots of this stuff. Yeah. And of course, they're only going to tell you the good stuff about it because it was short term and people probably were quite happy to be part of it. They're not going to tell you that months down the line, things could change. So that's where I kind of ring the bell of saying, listen, it's like anything. I'm not saying it's a bad thing in principle, but what could be the conditions? And I think you're foolish if you don't think there will be conditions. I mean, in other countries, I could list them, but when you're talking about saying, okay, even people in the UK, to state the obvious, if they're on benefits and they have to look for a job, they have to look for X amount of jobs per month to prove they are to get their benefits, because otherwise they're taking the piss. So you look and say, okay, what are the dangers of it? Number one, let's pick the first four. It could create dependency on the government instead of you being driven to do stuff. Now, that depends on what level of money you are given. But we are built to, hunt and look after our businesses and try and build things. And if people are given money and to do nothing, some people argue that's a good thing. Others would say, I'm not so sure. But we have to be careful it doesn't kill the, let's call it the ambition, by removing our kind of natural pressure to act and do something. What I mean is it could end up with you being like passive, which might sound good, but I don't think that would necessarily be good, especially for men who primarily are there to, to build and want to provide for their family. Could it erode your work ethic as well, which I think is interesting. But I literally sat there, went through. Go on.
I don't know if it makes you passive. I don't think that's. I think it comes from a good place. There's a strange sort of parallel. It comes out the same sort of thoughts as school uniforms. Everybody wants that leveling, the playing field to be leveled. Yes. So, from what I can understand, there are lots of people who are looking at it in a different way. So, okay, there's enough money floating around. Just ask Mr. Musk; he'll give you a few bob. There's enough money floating around for everybody to have a little bit more than they currently have, which will take away all of the daily pressures. Like, do I get through the month where I don't have to go to a loan shark? Do I do this? Do I do that? Now, what does it say? High tide. Was it high tide floats all boats? So that's the way that people are looking at it. So it brings it up a little bit. Now, if you want to work, if you want to have cream on your coffee, you have to go out to work because there's not enough money above that basic income. But I think the idea is to take away the fundamental stresses of life, to give you a better place to build up from.
Yeah, and I think that's where in a utopian
is that communism? World, I don't know. You tell me.
It's a good question because let's say you look at lockdowns, for example. They conditioned people to do nothing and get paid for it, and some people use that in a good way. Other people found it really hard. But I always think, let's say you did launch it and it went. Let's either talk about it just in a country or worldwide for the fun of it. Are your payments going to be tied to compliance? That is question number one. And I would wager that first of all, they probably wouldn't be. But let's use example. And I know vaccines are a very, divisive topic for various people, but it doesn't really matter. Ultimately, if you said, okay, you can have this money, but you've got to have the jabs that we tell you. And you say, oh, I'm all right, thank you. I don't want them, or I know someone had an adverse reaction or something, and you get told, well, no, you will have them, and you will have them regularly as we tell you, or you lose our money. And my understanding is, I think it's in Australia, where they'll reduce your benefit payments if you don't have your child vaccinated, which will reduce down and down and down. So already you can see that's going to take away some of your freedom. Now, they're not going to roll that one out straight away, because that's going to have people going, hold on a minute, what happens next? But isn't that an interesting one? If you then look at digital ID, let's call it integration, you would then say you have to have a digital ID to be able to have your UBI. So that brings another level of control. Then
but are we not already, sorry, Andy, but are we not already there? We already have digital ID.
Yes.
Your bank, I mean, I could play cashless everywhere. That's my
digital
ID.
How interlinked is it that then, if there is no cash, which I think would be a big mistake, then everything you do is trackable, traceable. And then you talk about programmable money, which again, David put something online that we don't agree with, because he's got his digital ID so we can look at all his social media. And David said something about, or Stephen said that men should sit around fires, and we think that's unacceptable. So we're now going to reduce his payments down, or we're going to reduce the fact that he can't drive more than 5 kilometers up the road, which when it links to 15
you're talking about we. Who's the we in your brain on this one? Who's we? That's as in
who would be controlling it?
Yeah. Who is your feared we person? The one that you fear most?
It's an interesting one, the rabbit hole to go down, because when people say it's the governments are replaceable. Yeah. Therefore, who sits behind that? I'm not sure and there's lots of NGOs, there's lots of, but I don't know exactly who those people are, which is probably the reason why it's well hidden. I mean, in the UK, again, I would say to people think that the Prime Minister is in charge, but that the Prime Minister, can be got rid of. And I think that's the worry in a way, is that you're never entirely sure who is pulling the strings behind the gaps. The further you go, you realize that lots of companies, are invested in by the certain people, like your Black Rocks and companies such as that. But who are the people that, when the governments, get moved around, that are still sitting behind there, pulling the strings on it? And ultimately, I think it means for a lot of people, there's the unknown, which is why I connect with a lot of people on LinkedIn, because they look and say, again, it sounds good on principle, but what happens if you accept it? There's probably no going back, if that makes sense.
But what happens if these we people? What happens if the people behind the people are actually people who want to do good? Do you think that you fundamentally think that they want to do bad? Are they all bad actors, or are there people who want the world to be a better place?
I would like to think so. If I had to bet my entire fortune on whether the people were good or bad, if you understand that the medical industry, the newspapers, the banking cartels, the people that make weapons, do you think the people that make weapons would like a peace in the world? No, because they make billions of pounds. When you look at the medical establishments who pay out billions in fines because they've admittedly done things wrong knowingly, but they know if they'll pay out a 1 billion but make 5, then that's all good. So if you took your stock look at the world, I'd love to think that there's people somewhere that are doing good, but I'm not entirely convinced. And if there was, great. But if there wasn't, once you have UBI and you're completely digitized, you're fucked, basically, because if it's used for good, then that's great. But if it's not, what's your other option? You're not going to post online about it. You're not going to speak out against it. The newspapers aren't going to help you with it. You're not going to do anything else, because how do you react to this kind of stuff? I think it's an interesting one for in our country and in the US. People can be, what's the word? It's a shame now when people are convinced that one side is good and one side is bad with the government. So they'll say, I hate Labour in the UK because the Conservatives are there to do good for us. Be like, okay, same in the US, where people that, there's Trump derangement syndrome, people on both sides. Some people love him and don't think he does anything wrong. Other people hate him and don't think he can do anything right. But often those think that other politicians are the answer, when in fact they forget how much of their own power they have. But again, if you go to digital currency, digital ID, all of that, carbon credits, you're then going to be controlled by a system. And whether that's AI or not, I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
Well, are we not already on that journey then? Sorry, because if I go to the hole in the wall and I put my pass in it, if that gives me cash money, does that make me feel any better? because the next time I go to get my cash money, I've done something or said something which has upset somebody somewhere, and it refuses to give me my money. So
yeah,
if it's digital or not, how nobody's coming around with envelopes like they used to. When I first started work, they come around with an envelope on a Friday and give you your money. That doesn't happen anymore. So
I had it in my pocket.
Is it not the same fear as now? Sorry, is it not the same fear that we should have now as regardless of universal basic income? Because if I piss somebody off and they close down my bank account, then it results in the same thing, does it not?
But there's a country that already does all this. China does this already. They do have a digital and social currency. So you're not talking hypothetically. You're actually talking about something that's real, except that, not everybody knows what China does, not even China. So whoever runs it is, right, we'll say Xi runs it, and whatever AI is behind Xi or the guys you don't know. So China already does this social and digital currency. And that's the only way you can get cars and apartments and this and that. So they do tie it. So if you say one day, I don't like President Xi, and you get 1,000 RMB a week, you're probably going to get 0 RMB. But if you go, I love Xi, you probably get more RMB. So China's already doing this digital social where they look at your face, they look at this, they look at your posting, they look, everything you do is monitored 24/7. So that's already there. The other thing you talked about a little earlier was work ethic. I don't think there's a work ethic anymore. Like, I'm an old school guy. Like, we work 60, 80, 100-hour work week. Okay. That's what you're supposed to do. The newer generation, like, we did a deal here in Austin in 2015. I remember people would come in and they'd stroll in at 10 o'clock. Around 2 or 3, they want to go to lunch, and they want to, then they're good. No, like that. They want this work-life balance. There's no such thing. There's work-life balance. Either you work, and if you make enough money, you have a life. If not, you're a hamster on a wheel. It's just the way it is. So I think the reason people like this basic income idea is because, and the problem with that also is the governments can't even take care of their citizens with health care. So giving me money is not going to do me any good. Like, if you can't keep me healthy and you can't keep me safe, I don't care if you give me $1 million a year. Okay, but you still can't keep me healthy. I'm going to spend my million on keeping healthy. So I think the governments, or whoever's going to take over the world next year, the little alien guys, if you will, the lizard people, as we joke about, or the Illuminati, whoever, I'm flexible. If they come up with a system that says we can take care of you, keep you healthy, mentally strong, and you can do whatever, whether you want to play golf, read books, you want to work, we don't care. Because literally in 10 years, AI is going to do everything. Let's just be honest. The way AI is going now, they won't need, even David and I were talking about this before the show, Google's come out with something called Flow. Flow can make content, right? You and I can sit here, talk, give it to Flow, and Flow will take our pictures and make a whole 5-hour video of what we just talked about. You don't even need us, right? We have robots. So at the end of the day, in say 2035, maybe sooner, humans are obsolete. So if you're a government, you have to figure out what to do with your humans. So if you can't give them the necessities they need, I'm talking about food and water and healthcare, you're going to have a problem when 7 billion or 8 billion people decide to take a picnic. And AI, theoretically, has no feelings. So AI is just going to look at us like we look at an ant, like they're a nuisance. Get rid of them.
Squash.
Yeah. Right. Isn't this? I mean, for the concept of the whole man academy, and I think this is your answer. It sounds like this is your answer to some of the social controls that are already in existence, whether it's in the UK or in the US, or the cancel culture, or even the people in the UK at least monitoring social media for certain posts. I mean, the whole man academy, is this the response to that, to say there's this, because you talk about people wising up and taking back control from what and control for whom? What are you trying to do with the whole man academy?
Yeah. And there's multiple streams of it. I always think, hence why it's called the whole man academy, because what I've met is enough guys that certain areas of their life are really good. Let's say they've got lots of money and a good business, but their marriage is in tatters. Or it could be that they've got a great marriage and they're physically healthy, but they're broke. And what I say with the whole man academy is you're trying to become that whole man, because if you've got one area that's really letting you down, the likelihood is that will drag everything down with you. And in the last 3-4 years, what you saw, I think, was more men frustrated with where the world is going, unsure about, even with our conversation, no one's got all the answers. I'm not saying anybody ever has, but looking around thinking, I want to connect with more men that are open-minded and can have a good conversation where David might make a point and Stephen might, and not be like, well, I'm gonna have to report you to the police for offending my opinion on something. But also those guys, I know we spoke about like work ethic. I would say, nearly everybody I know in life that's doing well is because at some point they've been prepared to work hard, get up early or stay up late, put the hours in, maybe miss some things that they'd love to have gone to so that they could get where they want to be. And you reap what you sow. Whereas the problem now, you have guys that they want everything given to them on a plate.
Right.
And UBI in a way.
And that's essentially UBI in a way.
Yes, yeah. And it's funny. I'm one of these people, though I have opinions like we all do, I'd love to be wrong about UBI. Like, wouldn't it be great if someone said, now, listen, by next year or by 2030, everybody's going to get X amount of money and it'll just be a bit more chilled in life. You'd be like, great, like, why wouldn't you want that? But if you take the last 5 years and if you go way back, you cannot hand on heart think that the system, whatever it is would allow that to happen.
It's all about the implementation of such a thing and the logistics around that. I mean, that's where you're saying the idea could be good in some world, but let's look at the actual implementation of such a thing.
Yeah, I just think, again, when you look on social media, again, people get their information from social media a lot of the time. And you'll say, go and read a few of the different, let's say UBI's example, go and read a couple of different books and just see what you think yourself. Like, listen to this podcast, listen to stuff, stop watching the shit on the news and listen to people that have got not necessarily massive platforms, because you probably find the massive platforms are mildly controlled by what they say anyway. But go down rabbit holes and listen to different people and make up your own mind. But maybe some people want to be told what to do. They want to be led and they want to be ruled. Maybe we just didn't.
I'd have to agree with that.
There was a survey that was done a couple months ago. We have a show called Sermon from the German and Brown Car Guy. It's a long story. He was telling us that they did a poll in London and they said people under 20, or I'm sorry, under 30, who said that 80% of them that polled said they want to live under a dictatorship. And we were discussing that on the show, and I was like, let me get this straight. You have no clue what a dictatorship is. I mean, because it looks cute in the movies with Chaplin, and he kicks a ball around, and it's very cute. But you really don't know what a dictatorship is, because you haven't been to North Korea. So it's sort of like, but you want to live under that. They don't get it that who you marry, what you eat, where you go, you're told everything, and that's when I get back to old school world thoughts. So these new people are just like, they are little drones. It literally is true. Like, you look at TikTok in China, right? Be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an astronaut. Look at TikTok in the UK and the US. Hey,
stupid.
Pour water all over your head. I'm sorry, what? So it's kind of like, are you kidding me? So it's the dumbing down of society. So if I was a government or the evil power, which some people think, but anyway, if I was going to do that for UBI, are you kidding? How best to control 8 billion little ants? It's like, here's your money. We'll take care of you. I can do anything I want because you'll never know, because you're too stupid. And that's really kind of what we're taking society to.
But isn't that what I always jokingly say to people, and they come back to me, months later and say, well, yeah, I've just noticed that. But I always say, like, 80% of the population are sheep, and they're very happy to be that way. They don't want complicated decisions. They want just to be able to eat and, watch what they want to watch, go to work, get on the same train. It's a phenomenal amount of people that are just super happy to do that. And it's the irritating 20%, which are probably all four of us are part of.
Which is us.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Who say, okay, well, no.
David, you make a really good point, because I look at this one in the UK. When lockdowns happened, most people just, because they were given money to stay at home, it placated them. And amazingly, the weather was really good for the whole time we had the first few months of lockdown. It's almost as if someone created the weather for us. Who would have thought it? And what happened was that a lot of people were like, hey, I know our freedom's been taken away, but we're being paid some money. The sun's out. I can sit in the garden and have a beer. Fucking great. What was really interesting was the lockdown protests in the UK started small. I think there was 1,000 people at the first one that I saw, which was in London. And I mean, I went to that one because I was like, I just want to connect with some more people that are seeing something different, not entirely sure what it is. Fast forward, I can remember a year and a half. I mean, there was 500,000 people marching through London saying we're done with lockdowns and everything else. But what was funny was if you spoke to certain men around it, they'd say, oh, I haven't got time for that. You know, it's only my freedom. It's only my kids being fucking masked at school. It's only vaccines coming through. It's only all this stuff. But when the Premier League football said they were going to break away and Chelsea, Manchester United, Arsenal, whatever, said they were going to create a Super League, which would affect.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're talking about important stuff now, Anthony.
They were at the Chelsea stadium, what have you, with their tops off, going, fucking no masks, no whatever. But you guarantee on a Monday they were back masked on the tube. And I've said on podcasts before, I was interviewed by a guy who would be brilliant for your podcast called Neil Kramer, who's based in the US.
He's on next week. He's on next week.
It's just, but I said on that podcast, it showed you what was important to some men. Freedom wasn't, but football was. And again, I used to love football. I've interviewed Premiership football. I've played football my life. But I see now how that is a bread and circus. A lot of men aren't where they want to be in life, and they'll moan they haven't got enough money, they're overweight, their marriage is shit, they don't have sex, they don't see their kids. But if you ask them, what did you do on Tuesday night? They'll say, oh, I sat for an hour and a half watching men who are faster, stronger, fitter, have more sex, and are richer, run around chasing the ball. And you're like, cool, but you've got to look at the priorities.
Yeah.
Well, see,
yeah, it's
that
a bit
would
like my kids were. I mean, they went through a period. My daughter years ago, they went through a period of watching the Kardashians. You think, what's Kardashian? I have to watch that. And I said to her, what are you doing? I said, are you spending your life watching other people live their lives? You know, I mean, really? And but you could say that it's the same. It's the same thing as, you know, like as EastEnders or as Corrie or Hollyoaks or whatever. People are so into that in the UK. These are soaps. People are so into it that they actually believe that those people are real. You know, and they're spoken to in supermarkets and, you know, on a regular. It's not like, oh, it just happens, you know, every now and again. No, it's something which is increasingly regularly happening, that soap stars are spoken to as if they're the character, because they live in your front room, you know, 3 days, 4 days a week.
Trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
I'm a great believer in that. Not only those things, let's say EastEnders, which the other guys won't know, is a fairly downtrodden group of people living in an average part of London. Everything's about fighting divorce, being poor, drinking at the pub, being whatever. And it's a fairly shit existence. And that normalizes it. And those people sit at home and they're like, oh, they understand me. They feel like me. And ultimately, you're like, there's nothing aspirational. I think that's why when Neighbours and like Baywatch came out, I'm not saying they're not indoctrination, possibly in some way, but at least it was sunny and people were fit and healthy and what have you. You know, seeing Hasselhoff and Anderson running around is a lot more cheerful than seeing, you know, a couple of people on a rainy Tuesday in a London pub. But look at things when you go back, like Friends, you know, think how massive that was. Understand that if that was wanted to, that could be used as an indoctrination tool for people. Because
it is. It has been, isn't it? Surely.
Haircut, the same as Jennifer Aniston. You know, I want a Jennifer Aniston. I love her. Don't leave. I know you're everything to me. You look online, you're like, wow, it's so powerful. But if you took all that away, I'm not sure how you do that, but you'd be interested to see people's eyes open up and be like, oh, there is a real world out there that's away from Kardashians and people like that.
Yeah, but they don't people have to get out and live.
But they don't want that, do they? They go out to this scary world. Remember, the world we live in is all scary. It's full of paedophiles and terrorists, and people are, you know, they've got to do all sorts of horrible things to me. You know, and that's just going to the supermarket. I mean,
that's David's neighbors.
Well, Anthony,
you rent your ransom round.
Anthony, what message of empowerment do you have for potential Whole Man Academy potentiates or other people who are interested, at least in this new line of thinking?
Perfect. An easy one. and you can apply this male or female, but I use my term, become a one night a week man. And what I mean by that is, I know everybody listening is fucking busy. If you've got kids or jobs and emails and bills to pay and what have you. But if you're more interested in any of what we've talked about, plus any other avenues you want to go down, you say to yourself, do you know what? I'm still going to watch TV if I do what have you, but what about if one night a week, I use that night to do some research on a topic that isn't watching shit TV? What could I learn in those 2 or 3 hours? And I apply that to a lot of guys that speak to me and say, I want to build a side product, a side hustle, or I want a new career. And I say, cool. I'm not saying burn your life to the ground and stop everything, but can you spend at least one night a week? And this is important, where you go and say to your wife or your kids, if this is the man, I'm working tonight. Please don't interrupt me or bother me. I'm going to have dinner with you. Then I'm going in my office or wherever. And become that one night a week person that just starts to open your mind to other possibilities in life. Because once you start down that journey, there was a great comment which is called something like the staircase of disbelief, which is what Neil Kramer, who interviewed, spoke about. And once you're on that step, you just need to take one more step to kind of enlighten your mind to who runs the government, who runs big pharma, who runs the military complex, who runs religion. You know, each of those things can be something you could just educate yourself on and basically see what comes up.
I think I've got a good side hustle for you, Anthony. You should have the whole man shed. You should be selling sheds. Every man should have a shed, should he not?
So with a little fire in it. So there you go. You know. So, well, this is Anthony. This has been very cool.
Yeah, you have to, Anthony. You have to come back.
Come back.
We've been
talking come back. Yeah.
There's no rabbit hole that I won't go down.
All right. Well, we'll pick one next time and we'll go. But I want to also talk next time you come back more about the Man Academy.
Yes, please.
And I think that would be fascinating. And then if you want, we can pick a rabbit hole and just go down it for fun. I think that would be cool.
Sounds good. All right, guys. Well, I'll take the beer. It's been a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Come back soon, Anthony.
Cheers. Bye. All right. So Anthony went bye-bye. Anthony was good. That was very cool. I like that. So it's a different, I would like to have him and Guy on the same to discuss, and not combatively, because I know neither of them would be combative.
I don't think they'd be combative. Yeah.
But just to hear their different opinions together. So we should see if they would do that. Come on together, because I think I would like to hear
timeline as well. So that should be
good. Which is also good. But I know what Guy's retorts are to Anthony's, and then Anthony's retorts to Guy, because Guy's done all the programs he was mentioning. Guy did. You know what I mean? Like, he's the one who actually did the program in Canada, did the program in Wales. He's done all that. So it would be good to hear, like, here's what we found, all the pros, and then were there any negatives, and then, go down whatever rabbit hole. But I'd also like to have Anthony come back on his own and talk about the Man Academy, because I think that's fascinating. So
I think that's,
and in the interim, we'll pay a bill, and then we'll do some lost and found for people.
Get the freedom and the flexibility of remote work in the lucrative tech industry. Bend your life around the world. Bandicoot is the premier course and community for thriving in a remote tech career. Join the revolution today. Bandicoot.com, official partner of the Lost Dollar Business Club.
Ever wonder how millions vanish into thin air, or how a single dollar can make all the difference? Join us on Lost and Found, where we dive into the wild world of financial mysteries. From misplaced fortunes to unexpected windfalls, we unravel the stories of people, companies, organizations, and even governments who've lost and found millions. Lost and Found, because every dollar has a story.
Every dollar.
We would have John do it. Every dollar has a story. We would have John do it, but John's turning Nazi gold, so he can have lots of stories. So I will have David go last. I know.
Yeah, we got David go last. Come on, I got something for you. So this is there are a lot of high stakes jobs like pilots and healthcare workers and people where their mental workload is really important, and if they mess up, the catastrophe could occur. So the researchers at University of Texas at Austin have come up with a device to help you in this high stakes scenario. It's an electronic tattoo stuck to your forehead.
Yeah,
it tells you that tells you how high your mental workload is. And if it becomes problematic, then somebody can say, hey, your workload is too high. We got to swap you out. We got to have somebody else help you out. And this is not dystopian at all. This is a Dr. Nanshu Liu from the University of Texas at Austin said that this could help workers avoid serious mistakes and also protect their health. So now,
does he have shares in the tattoo company? Then that's
no, it's digital. So what are they projected on you, or you wear like a thing on your forehead?
It connects to your forehead. It sticks to your forehead.
Okay. That's what I figured. Okay.
It tells everybody around you if you are
like,
over. Right.
I want the transparent ones that just go change color.
Here's what I think we should do. We should get Dr. Shwami here to come on the show.
And I would love to get Dr. Liu on the show.
Let's email Dr. Shmoomy because he's nothing going on because it's Austin. The summer, everything's closed. Nobody's here. So let's have Dr. Shmoomy come on.
Yeah, from me.
And I'm close. And he can put this on me during the show, and he can see how much into his segment before I go postal. But he's not going to send it to you guys because you're too far. But anyway, that would be interesting just to see. I have a problem with it in general because everybody's stress level is different, and just because it says on my little thing that my brain or whatever, or this device because of blood pressure, which is I'm sure what it is, thinks I'm stressed out. In my mind, I'm great. What's wrong? So I have a problem with that unless he can tell me how you're really reading the biorhythms to explain to me if I'm really overstressed in my position. You know what I mean? Because some people...
Is it a lost dollar or a found dollar? That's what I want to know.
Well, if you believe it, and Shwami makes money...
Yeah.
He makes money.
It's a found dollar.
That's gonna be a win for the dystopian crowd. Yes, that's right.
Oh, that's gonna be great. Everyone's gonna be walking with these stupid little, how you doing today? Oh my God, what does it say? Oh my. Remember I said the pussification of the planet? Thank you very much for reinforcing that.
For the record, you did say that. Yeah.
There you go. Hi, I'm the pussification of the planet. So any real man's not going to put that on his forehead. He'll be, like a 40 and under crowd that's like, I'm overworked. What did you do today? I came in and had a cup of coffee. I'm stressed. I can't work anymore. Okay, good. Take me home, please. Take me to a planet other than here. Pluto, I'm coming. Board the ship. Mine is Donald Trump is raising $3 billion because, he's not the president apparently, with his companies to buy more crypto and do more things in crypto. So his two sons, Abbott and Costello, are going to help with his other companies. I think it's Truths or whatever, are raising $3 billion so they can invest more into crypto. And that's money making for him. I'm not sure how that's
in his personal time, right? It's in his personal time.
It's in his personal times, because why run the country? And so I find that fascinating for a bunch of reasons. Crypto's still not tied to anything. It's still in my mind. It's like buying a commodity. It's like a Ponzi scheme, right? It's stock. It's all the same crap. But it's very interesting because as the president, it's almost, and I'm not saying he's doing this, it's just a hypothesis, and he's not. It's like almost insider trading. Go, I'm buying it. Ooh, everybody's going to buy it. So when you're done being president and you decide you're going to cash out, we'll say Bitcoin or crypto's $1 million. Right. And you've ridden the wave. And now the new president comes in and goes, this is crap. We're done. And it goes, boom. Yeah. So the question is, do you ride the wave and say, okay, I'm going to put in whatever. I'm going to enjoy the bump and get out because now everybody's doing it.
That's what you got to do. You got to, if you're not in, you're out.
Yeah, right. But it's a very interesting thing.
It is an interesting
thing. Right. But I'm just saying, so if every president in the world tomorrow says, you know what, we're all going to do crypto, it'll pop. But at some point when new leaders come in, they go, this is crap. And they're going to be like, we're not doing crypto. What happens? And it's like all the governments have their own crypto. They have their digital currencies. I get crypto. I've played in the space. I've had money invested in it. I've pulled money out of it, in it, and blah, 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 done the blah. I get it all. I just find it fascinating that now the SEC is thinking about regulating it. Okay. I think once it becomes more like, I don't say this and people will cringe, like a stock, more better. Like I like the idea of tokenization of assets. I like the concepts. I've done them. I like them. I just want to see it be a little more where A is A. not the Wild West where A is like quadruple Z. And that's where my concern is with all of that. But
is it a lost dollar or a found dollar, Stephen? That's the question. That's the burning question.
I think here's the thing. It's both. I think it
Right.
depends on what side of the fence you're on. It depends on what side of the fence you're on. Yeah. So there you go. It depends on what side of the Ponzi, I guess. So I got a bridge, by the way, in Brooklyn for sale. Anyway, David, since John's not here, what do you have? What cow jumped over the moon?
Well, I'm a bit 50-50 like you as well now. So I've got one which is a lost dollar and a found dollar, depending on how you want to have a look at it. But it's always people always say to me, "Oh, let's go and have a cup of coffee." And we say, "Yeah." They say, "Oh, we have to go to Starbucks." And then someone will say, "Oh, I can't go there; it's so expensive." And now I've found out this week why it is so expensive, because and this is not AI. This is an actual photograph of the former CEO of Starbucks.
The impressive yacht of former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz provides a spectacle in South Holland this week. The 100-meter, for you people in America, that's 300 feet, long ship known as Project 824 wiggled itself through the narrow Dutch waterways. I've heard that about the Dutch, that they're very narrow. Anyway, the yacht built by a ship at Van Lent is the second largest vessel. It's not really a ship ever built by the company, and sails in Rotterdam for its sea trials. Very nice.
I had a lot of respect for Howard Schultz. He actually, I heard him speak at when I was at USC, and I've heard him in several interviews, and he speaks very. I thought he spoke very wisely about a lot of what he did at Starbucks, but this takes him down a notch in my book.
Yeah, I mean, well, when I first look at it again, Steve, my first impression when I saw it was it's AI, but I've seen other photographs of people actually, because you can see this little bridge, which is actually just to the left of the tower. The bridge is up like this to let the boat through, and there were hundreds of people who came out. Obviously, most of them were just wanted the boat to crash into their house so they get insurance money. I'm sure.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think, okay, now I know why Starbucks is so expensive.
Now you know why it's $57 for a small coffee. Here's the funny thing with Howard Schultz. I've read his books, and I've read books about Starbucks. And if it wasn't for Bill Gates Sr., he would have never gotten to Starbucks, because somebody was trying to screw him when the owners of the original Starbucks said, "You can buy it from us." So Howard Schultz, I will say this much: incredible businessman.
Yeah,
I mean, that's nice you have a play toy, because you got to keep up with Bezos, because we know you're Jewish, you have a small penis. It's just how it goes. So it's true, because Landsman, we all know. Anyway, it's true. I'm a Jew, I can say it. They're hung like mosquitoes. It's very true. Anyway, so incredible businessman, did what he had to do with Starbucks. If you want to buy yourself a toy, buy yourself a toy. My thing is that, and I don't know if he's publicizing it or not, just don't tell anybody, because nobody does.
Well, I think it's
a little late now.
Yeah, well, we're telling everybody. So,
well, not only the fact, I mean, this was a photograph which I think was on Blue Sky or on X or something.
Right.
So people have been talking about it here, but now, of course, it's on the Lost Dollar Business Club. So
now
everybody in the whole world will know now. Do you want to know where all those expensive coffee money went to? It was a big fuck off yacht that he bought for himself.
Love it. That's awesome.
There you go.
All right. Well, Howard, enjoy your. It's actually called a vessel.
I'm not jealous. I'm just astounded.
It's over a certain ton. It goes. It's not a ship, and it's a yacht. So a yacht is so much tons. A ship is so much ton. This is, I'm betting, over whatever tonnage makes it a vessel. So technically, it's a vessel. Yeah, it's a vessel. Just letting you know. I learned that on the Onassis yacht, on the Onassis vessel. I said, "This is a beautiful yacht," and the guy said to me, No, it's a vessel. And the captain explained to me how they determine ships, vessels, and yachts by tonnage. So over a certain ton, it becomes a vessel. When you see a cargo ship, it's technically a cargo vessel. So
you should see all I can say is you should see my vessel. That's all I'm saying.
We don't want to see David's.
Kids, have a wonderful week.
Just saying.
Michael, do we have anybody coming in next week?
Not yet. Nobody confirmed. I'm working on it. I'm
Neil
working
Kramer,
on
or Camper now is going to be the new guy.
the topic. I mean, the topic might be relevant anyway for us. Generation AI. So
Ooh, I like
there's, the concept of the next generation being so reliant on AI and how that's shaping their hearts and minds.
Well, I shall listen to the show, guys, but I won't be able to make it. I've got friends coming over from England for a week, so I have to bow out.
Leave friends that are AI, so it'll be good to be
Well,
talking to
other than you two coma-induced figures.
Yes. Other than that, everybody, thank you for watching and listening. Don't forget, we're live every Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. So for you people around the world that can't figure that out, just figure out what time it is in New York. It's 8:30. And we rebroadcast the show on Saturday mornings. We hope you liked our guest. That was from the
Anthony Aspbury,
from the
Whole Man Academy. Yes.
Whole Man Academy. We will have Anthony back, hopefully.
Yeah, let's hope so.
And if you would like to be a guest, feel free to reach out. And Tommy, our people are talking to your people. So Tommy Cruise, maybe a guest. We'll have to see.
Well, maybe he'll cruise on the vessel. Who knows?
Right to the Lost Dollar Business Club. Yeah, that's right.
All right. With that, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see y'all next week. Cheers, everybody.